There are so many fascinating elements to this Bills-Broncos divisional round playoff game. And let's start with the state of the Bills' beleaguered wide receiver group, which I talked about last week in the preview of the Bills-Jaguars playoff game. This was already one of the thinnest receiver rooms we've seen in a playoff game. And in the win over Jacksonville, the Bills lost Gabe Davis to a torn ACL. And from Maddie Glab, the Bills team reporter, we found out Tyrell Shavers, one of the depth options at wide receiver who's actually played a lot and been a formidable blocker, also tore his ACL in Jacksonville. And he actually played over 20 snaps on a torn ACL in the second half. So naturally, I researched how good the Broncos defense has been against tight ends this season, because the Bills are going to have to use them a lot in this game. And believe it or not, the Broncos defense has allowed the 9th most receiving yards to tight ends this season. And even if Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers were healthy, it was highly unlikely that the Bills were going to get a lot of production from the receivers anyway. During the regular season, the Broncos allowed just 6 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers, tied for the best in the league. And when it came to receptions and receiving yards to receivers, they were like top third or middle of the pack. At this point, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Bills are not going to try to prioritize throwing the ball to wide receivers beyond Khalil Shakir and maybe a sprinkle of Brandon Cooks. They signed Christian Wilkerson, who was pretty good in the preseason, to the practice squad. Curtis Samuel had his practice window opened from injured reserve, and Mecole Hardman sits on the practice squad. So we will probably see some elevations at the receiver spot for the Bills entering this game. And it will be very intriguing to see what the Bills' offensive philosophy is throwing the football in this game. Who are they targeting? Probably a lot of tight ends and a lot of running backs out of the backfield. But I think what even stands out more in this game is the battle between the Broncos pass rush, which is arguably the best in football, against the Bills' offensive line that is very good, and of course, Josh Allen. During the regular season, the Broncos led the NFL with 68 sacks. They had the highest sack percentage among all defenses. And depending on where you look, they were either second or third in defensive pressure rate at over 40%. And then on the flip side there, look right above my head. The Bills finished 4th, according to NFL Pro, in pressure rate allowed as an offensive line. Although Josh Allen was sacked considerably more during the regular season, 40 times, than what he was in 2024 when he was sacked only 14 times. But even though Allen was under pressure on 38.5% of his dropbacks against the Jaguars, he was only sacked 1 time. And then, of course, there is Broncos quarterback Bo Nix, who has certainly made some strides in his second season after playing in the playoffs against the Bills just a year ago. He was one of the least pressured quarterbacks during the regular season, pressured on only 32.1% of his dropbacks. And better yet for the Broncos, he was only sacked 22 times with a minuscule 10.1% pressure to sack rate. So 10% of the time that he was pressured, the play ended in a sack. That is incredibly low. That's like where Josh Allen was a season ago. He enters this game in the low 20% in pressure to sack rate. And certainly all eyes will be on Sean Payton in this game as well. Because like we saw in the wildcard round, the Bills do have problems stopping the run. And in the last 4 contests of the regular season, the Broncos offense was 20th in EPA per rush. So the Broncos aren't exactly entering this contest with the ground game being a clear-cut strength. So something has to give here. Do the Broncos run the football well against what has been one of the worst run defenses in football this season? Or do the Bills bounce back as a run defense on the ground against a Broncos running attack that has just not been as effective late in the season as it was earlier? And one last thing about the Broncos defense and its pass rush. They absolutely can get after it. But I think it is worth noting that the final 2 regular season games for the Denver Broncos, they faced Chris Oladokun of the Chiefs and Trey Lance of the Chargers. Now, the week before, they did pressure Trevor Lawrence on almost 48% of his dropbacks, which is a huge number. But the Jaguars went into Denver and scored 34 points in victory. And I really don't know which offensive philosophy the Bills will deploy when it comes to their protection of Josh Allen for this matchup, because against the Jaguars, the Bills used some type of chip help, whether it was from a running back out of the backfield or an extra tight end, on 28 of Josh Allen's 38 dropbacks. That's almost 74%. But last year in the wild card win over the Broncos in Orchard Park, the Bills chipped or had extra help for Josh Allen on just 12 of 32 of his dropbacks, which is just under 38%. So I think we are in for another wild, highly entertaining game. And I think this game ultimately comes down to how well the Broncos can run the football, how well the Bills stop the Broncos run game, and for the Bills, how well they can protect Josh Allen against a vaunted Broncos pass rush. Oh geez, I didn't even mention James Cook. He and the Bills run game, giving more production to the offense, would go a long way for the Bills in this contest in Denver.